like it or not, we're in the music industry and we're judged based off of our looks, based off of our sound, our band, our aesthetic, literally everything we are judged for when we are on stage. In this video, I've compiled a list of 10 different things that you can do to maximize and level up your performance as a lead guitarist. So let's get into it. Hi, my name is Aiden. I'm a guitar player, professional guitar player out of Chicago. And over the last few years, I've been doing professional guitar playing, everything from gigging, teaching, YouTube, everything that every other guitarist does. And what I've learned over the years is that a lot of guitar players and a lot of musicians, especially in the rock and metal hemisphere, don't really put as much effort into certain things that they should, and it affects their live performances and it keeps them at the same spot instead of continuing to ascend and get better. So in this video, you're going to learn some really valuable information that will help you stand out and help you keep growing as a guitarist and as a person. Now, before we get into this list, I want to make sure you understand not all of these things are about your playing and are about your equipment. Some of these things are about other things like your stage performance, like the way you dress and things like that. So I just want you to know that it will cover some of those things too. Please listen to them. They're very important. And as a prerequisite, I need to make a disclaimer. You need to practice, and you need to practice with your band. That is not going to be one of the numbers on the list because that is kind of a giver. Now, it might seem silly that I have to say that, but to be honest with you, I've played a lot of shows, everything from the rinky-dink basements all the way to the giant venues, and you'd be surprised at about half the bands are not tight and the other half are actually tight. Sometimes even more bands are not tight, okay? And you need to practice your stuff. You need to get that done. It might sound silly, but I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff that have gone really, really bad as a result of just not rehearsing. So my first tip for you at number one is going to be to dress for the show. Look, I totally understand. It's like, it's all about the music, man. It's all about the metal. It doesn't matter how I look. I don't care about how people judge me. How is that working for you? Is what I would kind of say that. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I'm just saying that we're at a day and age where music isn't just about music. It's about the aesthetic. It's about how you look. It's how your band looks together as a music group. Okay, if you look at some of the best musicians, they all had a really interesting outfit that kind of stuck out, or they all had matching clothing or something that made them more recognizable, okay, and more professional. So if you're planning on going up on stage with cargo shorts and a Metallica tank top and you haven't showered in 3 days, have fun. I hope everything goes well for you, but people are going to judge you and they're not going to take you very seriously. And I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to give you advice that when you put effort into how you look on stage and you make sure that you're matching the aesthetic, you're making sure that you're matching your band and you look really cool and you really stand out, people respect that. Both the other bands as well as the people in the crowd are like, oh yeah, I know them. That's the person that wears this sort of ordeal on there. Okay, I can give you my band as an example. I put on makeup, I put on, all kinds of darker, cool clothing, and I try out new things. And we all sort of fit that kind of darker gothic metal aesthetic, right? And every time we've done that, we always get compliments on how we look, and it makes us stick out, okay, as a band. It really, really helps. The same goes for the makeup you wear, even the shoes that you wear. You want to look as good as you can to make sure you are as professional as you can so people take you seriously. Number two, make sure you double check all of your equipment to make sure it's working. Again, I know that might sound like another prerequisite, but it's really not. You don't know how many shows I've been to, and myself, to where we've had issues with our equipment not necessarily working because we were underprepared, something happened to go wrong and we didn't have a backup, or other bands have had the same sort of issues. So if you have an active pickup on your guitar, bring an extra 9-volt battery. If you haven't changed your strings in a while, make sure you change your strings before the show. If you have to charge things, like maybe you're using a wireless or maybe you're using in-ears, make sure that you bring batteries for those, or make sure you charge those overnight to make sure they have a full battery for the gig on the next day. All of these things are really important. If you're using a tube amp, for example, make sure your tubes work. All of these things are going to really help make sure that your live show is really, really smooth and really, really slick. That way there are no weird hiccups where you have to say stop and then say things in the mic that are, a little embarrassing. Like, let me tell a joke while, we fix this and this. And listen, it happens to everybody. Even the most professional bands have issues with their in-ears or a string breaks or something like that. It's inevitable. However, we can lessen this significantly if we take the time the night before to make sure that everything is working okay. Tip number 3 is going to be your stage presence. Now listen, like I said about tip number 1 with the judging and people looking at the things that you're wearing, the same goes for your stage presence. So listen, if you are staying in one spot and you're staying in the same spot and you're not really moving, the crowd is going to match that. Remember, the crowd always matches the energy that you put into it. So if you are going crazy and you're headbanging and you're really getting into it and you're making that eye contact with the crowd and stuff, and you're getting them going crazy and fired up, they're going to match that energy. People want to have a good time. They come to shows to have a good time, to be entertained, to dance, to mosh pit. All of these things, to headbang, right? To have fun with their friends, right? They want to see you shine. They want to see you be yourself. So if you're not doing that and you're standing in the same spot and you're not really moving around a lot, or you're just kind of in dead space where you're staring out and things, or you're really nervous and you're just double checking everything, they're going to feel that energy and they're not going to think that you're very professional. They're going to think amateur is what they're going to think in their head, okay? Best way to prepare for this is to practice this. This goes for all of the band members too, right? Things that we do on stage, for example, is we like to choreograph when we headbang, right? For certain parts of the breakdown. It's really cool when everybody's in sync when they headbang because it causes everybody else to go in sync. There are certain parts that are really fast and crazy, so we go fast and crazy, right? There are parts of my guitar solo where I'll walk up in front and I'll do a guitar solo really close to the crowd, right? There's parts where our singer will go backwards and do like a back bend and people are like, oh my goodness, this is so crazy. All these things, you're like look at the drummer who throws the stick in the air and does crazy acrobats, right? All these things get people really hyped up and really happy to see you, and that will cause people to come see you again and listen to your music again. Tip number 4 is to communicate with the audience as well as your band members. Everybody's equipment is different. Some people are using in-ears, some people are not using in-ears. Some people are going old school. Maybe the drummer is the only one listening to the click. Maybe you got backtracks, maybe you don't. Maybe you have 3 guitars on stage. Maybe you got a synthesizer, piano player, whatever you've got going on stage. We need to be sharing eye contact with the audience to make sure that they're engaged, give them nods, get into it, give them a high five, all that stuff, toss the picks out there. But we also need to be making eye contact with our bandmates and make sure that everybody's on time, they're having a good time, they're paying attention, making sure that they're not having any issues or anything like that. Eye contact, nods, things like that is the way you communicate during the song, right? Sometimes things happen where the click will go out, or sometimes things will happen where people will get lost. It's just how we are as humans. But when you show them your guitar but make it look a little bit more like normal and discreet, and you give them nods or you mouth something to them, you can make it look like it's relatively normal and most people won't actually notice in the audience, right? Just to help your bandmates get on track with everything and help them get through everything. So especially for these bands, like if you're in progressive metal and stuff like that, you got to really make sure that you're on point with everything, and having that communication with your bandmates is just going to make for a better time. Like, nobody likes working with someone who's in their own world. That's the last thing you want. Remember, it's not about you. It's not about one other person. It's about the entire band working together to create a really awesome performance. Number 5 is having a very good understanding of your band setup for the front of house. Now, listen, no matter where you go, you're always going to run into a front of house that is not very helpful. Like, I'm just being completely real with you. You get really good ones and you also get some really not so good ones. Some people show up late. Some of them don't care about your sound setup. Some of them won't even do the bare minimum and make sure that everything is working okay. But a lot of them are actually doing a really good job and they want to have a good show because they want you to come back, right? So when we're talking about knowing your sound setup, if you have a rack system, you got to make sure you know how to use that. If you have a laptop, you got to make sure how to connect that with your mixer and their mixer, okay? If you're just going your standard guitar amps, right? Things like tube amps and stuff like that. You got to make sure you know the proper levels that you always have. So one good thing to do about that is to make sure that during rehearsal you communicate with your other guitar player, your bass player, and everybody to make sure, like, okay, so I think a good spot for me on the volume would be to stay at 5, and then your other guitarists, maybe they got to go up to 6 because they're just a little bit more quiet usually, right? You got to check your clean tone and your lead tone and whatever you have. You got to make sure that when you step on that pedal, it's not going to skyrocket you or crank your volume down. You got to check up all those levels. You got to make sure all that stuff is good, and you got to make sure you know how to communicate that to the front of house so that way they can put on as good of a show as you can. Number 6 is to warm up before the show. Now listen, singers know this really well, but a lot of guitarists, for some reason, they don't want to warm up. Okay? But if you ask professional guitar players, especially the really, really good ones, most of them warm up before the show to some capacity. What I'll usually do is I'll just go into the back room or the green room, and I will just run through my warm-ups with my right hand, run through them with my left hand, get the blood flowing. Remember, sometimes you're going to be playing in the cold. Sometimes it's very cold up on stage. Sometimes it's really hot and your hands are really sweaty. You need to have that start of getting your hands warmed up and ready, so that way when you're on stage there's no delays or no weird things, because as guitarists we know that temperature, things like nerves, all that stuff can affect how we play. Okay, and usually when we go on stage we lose like 20 to 50% of our actual skill, especially if you're not used to playing in front of people. So make sure you warm up. Number 7 is to be social with the other bands as well as the crowd after the show if possible. So I know that when the show is over and you're done playing, a lot of people just want to go home. They just want to get their equipment and go. Do your best to communicate and to have a good time with the other bands, because number 1, you want to have a good time and you want to not make this thing super duper miserable, because it's really easy to feel like everything is a chore, including talking to people. However, you don't know who you're going to run into. You can make some really good friends. You can make some really good connections in the industry. You can have lifelong friends just from having those really good interactions. A bigger band can ask you to tour next year just by you being a really cool person and them liking your set. Okay, so that means that after the show and you put all your stuff away, start going to talk to the other bands, start talking to the other audience members, have a good fan connection with people, shake people's hand, take pictures with people. People might ask you to sign things. Do all of those things, enjoy all those things, and make sure that they have a really good time, because they are there for you, and having that extra experience of meeting you is going to just make their day, because if they really liked you and they want to talk to you, they're going to like you even more. Number 8 is kind of going off of number 7, which is to listen to the other band's set after you're done playing or beforehand. So oftentimes when we end up going to play shows with other big bands, most of the bands will not listen to the openers. Now, part of me understands this, because when you're on tour, it's exhausting. It's really hard to listen to all these bands and have this stuff, but we've also had the opposite experience where the bands that we've played for opening that are a lot bigger than us, they do listen to us and they do talk to us. It creates a much more personal and a much better environment overall when you're at the venue, and it makes the tension go down a lot, because sometimes when you're there, everybody's just like, and they're really, really upset for no reason. They're just, it's a long day or whatever. But when you listen to the other bands and you nod and you take videos for them and you share them on Instagram and stuff like that, that's what they love to see. And that's, again, it's more connection that you can make. So all of the bands that have actually listened to us, we're still in contact with on a regular or semi-regular basis, and we continue to support each other, and they will still ask us to play shows with them sometimes. So it's really, really cool. And to be honest with you, there's just a sort of a respect thing, right? If they listen to your music, you should definitely listen to theirs. Number 9 is a little bit more of a forgotten tip or an unconventional tip that a lot of musicians don't really talk about, is to keep in shape, have a good workout routine, stretch, do cardio, do yoga, etc., etc. Listen, when you're on stage and you're playing for 30 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours plus, you are going to burn a lot of calories and you're going to be on your feet for a very, very long time. If you're out of shape and you're not really feeling too good, a number of things can go wrong. You're going to sweat even more than you already do. I mean, I already sweat a ton when I'm on stage, but if you're really out of shape, you're going to be really exhausted. You're not going to play as good. You're not going to enjoy it as much, and you're not really going to feel as good. Okay? Part of why I do so much cardio throughout the week, and part of why I, try to go to the gym every other day, things like that, and stretch especially, not only because I do have back problems, but also just because I know that if I don't do those things, I'm going to have a much worse time on stage. Believe me, people do pass out. You need to make sure that you know, have some calories before you go on stage, get those energy gel packets or whatever you need to make sure you keep that energy. Because, I talked about the stage presence and going crazy. You're going to sweat. You're going to drop those calories. You're going to lose a lot of electrolytes. You need to be drinking that water. Okay. That's going to be really, really good for you. So make sure you keep in shape. Try to do your best to do that. Get some stretching in. Even if you're on tour, if you can work something out with that, go to a Planet Fitness or, get out and go for some walks or some light jogs. It's really going to benefit you a lot. And on top of that, you're going to look even better. Number 10 is going to be to share the stage with the entire band. Now, earlier I talked about how it's a performance with all of you guys, and nobody likes someone who thinks it's all about them on stage. And part of that is understanding the space, because sometimes when you're on stage, there's not a lot of room for you to move around. Sometimes you have to utilize the little space that you have before you end up going towards somebody else. Now, there are ways that you can move around by slowly walking and going by the other guitar player and playing, or the singer will hand you the mic and then you'll sing stuff. Things like that is really, really good and important, but that comes with the eye contact, the communication, the rehearsals, and things like that. But you don't want to be in your own world and start, your guitar accidentally hits the singer in the head, or you bump into someone and then they fall or something like that, or, you're not looking at your feet and you accidentally hit a pedal, or you step on the 1/4-inch cord that's connecting your guitar. Things like that may sound very amateurish, but it happens all the time. So we need to be very conscious of the environment around us that will make sure that the show looks really good and professional. Okay, and this takes practice, but it's something you'll get used to. And I guess that goes for the opposite too, is if you have the space, right? Like, we've played stages that are ginormous and we almost don't even know what to do with that. That's great, but you need to utilize that space more now, because now you have more space to fill out. Because if they just see, boring guitar players and singers just standing there with this giant stage, it's just not going to look very good aesthetically. So keep that in mind too. As I was filming this, I had one more big tip for you, and this is just something that I've noticed throughout, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who are music fans and people who play in a band now this is just my opinion, don't get drunk before you go on stage. The same goes, in my opinion, for getting too stoned, okay? So listen, I understand that everybody's got a different tolerance. I don't drink or smoke or anything like that. I try to stay as healthy as I can, but I know that some people are just like, I want to have a beer before the show. I want to take the edge off. That I understand. That's totally cool. That's not wrong. Or I just want to take a few hits of my vape, or I want to just make sure that I'm a little bit calmer, right? But if you're getting completely smashed, you're taking shots before you go on, you're drinking tequila, and then you're downing 5 beers, or you ever see it where maybe somebody on stage has like a line of beers and they're downing them while they play. The amount of people that can maintain a really good show and do that is very few and far between. And there's always that one person who's like, man, I can do it. I'm that one guy. And it's like, you can't answer that yourself. You need to ask other people if it's actually affecting you, not your friends, because they're not going to tell you what you actually need to hear. So listen, if you want to be a really good musician and you want to be respected, drink after the show, man. You've got all night. You've got all these other bands to listen to. You got people to talk to. People will buy you drinks, man. Do you know how many people offer me to buy drinks even though I don't even drink? Or they'll buy me food or something. Same goes for all my other bandmates, especially our singer. Are you kidding me? So it's like, if you can just wait, use it as your celebration, right? It's like, okay, I played a good show. Now I'm going to go have a drink, now I'm going to celebrate. Or now I can take some hits, things like that. And listen, I'm not judging you. Like I said, it's like, I get it. If you want to have a little something beforehand, you do you, that's fine. But in my opinion, if you're going to do it, save it for after. Now, just to tell you a little bit of a story here, I won't name anybody in particular, but I played a show with some really awesome people one day, and it was at a relatively large venue. It was a pretty nice show. It was a lot of good bands were playing, and we had a really good turnout. Now, there was one individual of one of the bands who ended up getting completely wasted on a very light beverage. Let's just say it was one of those, like, cans of like tea or something like lemonade, or it was some like very mild liquor. And I don't know where he got it from. He must have brought it from home, but he was just going to town on him. And by the end of the night, he was like slurring, spilling over everyone when we were trying to take pictures all over people. And it was not fun to be around that environment. And, you know, I don't recall if they were on stage and drunk or not, but whenever people are, it puts a really sour taste in people's mouth. They want to see you doing really good. You know, I understand that in the audience, people are drinking too and stuff, and that's totally cool. But man, put on that good show and then celebrate if you're going to celebrate, you know. That's just my opinion. So that's I guess your little bonus thing. So what are your thoughts? Is there anything in particular that you've learned from playing on stage, or is there anything that you find that other people can improve on when they go on stage? Any extra tips that I forgot? So whatever it is, drop a comment and let me know, and then I'll see you guys in the next video.